Welcome to the Voices of Automation, part of the Metric Podcast Network. This show is dedicated to the people driving the automation revolution, the leaders, the innovators, and the commercial minds shaping the way the world moves, builds, and operates. Each episode, we sit down with a senior figure from across the automation space for an honest conversation about their career, their craft, and their read on where the industry is heading. Whether you're an executive or an engineer starting out, there's something in this for you. On Metric Geo Production, this is Voices of Automation. I'm in New York City at the Interfex conference with Sigmund Aaro, Vice President of Client Engagement for Project Farma. Sigmund, thank you for coming on the show today, Voices of Automation. Welcome to New York. Appreciate you kind of coming on and taking some time. For those watching who don't know yourself or Project Farma, give a little introduction.
No, absolutely. So, thanks for being here. It's going to be a good little talk today, I think. Nice to always visit New York. Interfex is a kind of a show that I always liked a lot. Always nice to come back to, so I really enjoy that. So, coming up from Austin, Texas today.
Okay.
So
a little bit change in the weather there.
A little bit, it's going to be a rainy week, but so this is actually quite nice. Less rain, but definitely colder.
Yeah.
So,
Fair.
Very much so.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about Project Farma.
So, I just joined Project Farma here fairly recently. I've been in the automation space for, most of my career since the 90s. So Project Farma is really a consulting company, in the life sciences industry. And we're working on everything from ideation through the lab, space development molecules, and novel therapies. And then we support our customers, being the majors and the tier twos and all of them actually, but all the way through scale up, tech transfer, and into fill finish. And we're working on process consulting. We're working on a lot of CQV, CSV validation. Mm-hmm. So whenever we do early consulting we always do it with the end in mind. And I think that is kind of the benefit for what we provide to our customers. And then you can work as peer review, owner's rep, and work with systems integrators to execute a lot of the work in the automation space. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that is from robotics, of course, but a lot of the process scale up, all the SCADA, the PLC, DCSs, and all that. That's kind of what we do. Okay,
and I know we kind of talked a little bit before this, just kind of about how the capacity in which you were brought on, obviously relatively new to Project Farma. What was your role kind of joining Project Farma in the greater scheme of the overall company as well? Because,
so I'm working on we're building different center of excellences within Project Farma. There are like 7 of them.
Okay.
And I'm working heavily with the digital transformation and automation part of it. We have regulatory affairs and quality. We have, of course, CQV and CSV and the validation services. And we have strategic services. We have process consultants. So, definitely a few hundred people there. And we are under a company called PerkinElmer as well, and very closely aligned with a sister company called OneSource, mm-hmm. which is doing lab services and asset management of laboratory from ideation and through, lab in the loop type thing and bringing the molecules and the therapies to life, for scale up and into production. So we're a part of a bigger company for sure, about 5,000 people, under the PerkinElmer brand.
Okay.
So I'm here to help drive, a segment of that business and make some successful outcomes with customers in the name of, I think, really data science, contextualization of data, and bring in the digital transformation and automation. And it ties more and more together, I think, today than it ever has, to be honest.
Now, I think we'll get into that a little bit, but let's start from the beginning, right? Like, how'd you get into the automation space? Take us through that.
So, it's one of these random things, right? So I'm from Norway originally and got my first engineering degree in Bergen on the west coast of Norway. Okay. And when I was done with that, I had the opportunity to go to Rapid City, South Dakota, of all places. I went to School of Mines and Technology up there. I had a lovely couple of years. And on the back end of this, and we talked about that a little bit as well, that's back in the day when I still had hair. So I had a ponytail and leather jacket on the motorcycle. Drove through, a little bit, down to Austin from Rapid City. Had a 3-week little trip there. And I met my wife in Austin and moved to Austin, Texas instead. So as soon as I got there, got into with a company called Columbia Scientific. And they do instrumentation, monitoring of stack pipes. They were later bought out by a company called Kidd International, an English holding company. But already there, I got into PLC programming, for flue gas extraction, telemetry reports, and SCADA system on an old box called Odessa Engineering. And after that, I joined a company called Advanced Systems Integration, and we were very aligned with Emerson at the time. So Emerson bought Fisher and also Rosemount, and each one of those more instrumentation heavy on the level one on the ISA 95. The other one was final control, with Fisher control valves. They both had a control system, and they were called Provox and RS3 from Rosemount. Provox came from Fisher, and instead of driving any of those DCS or distributed control systems forward, they started developing Delta V in the mid-90s. So, so I already then started to touch and do some testing on the early parts of Delta V, which is now one of the most, common DCS or distributed control systems for life sciences because it's built around the IS-88 batch structure as well. So very fun to get early started with that. But that was kind of how I got rolling.
Okay. I see a lot with Delta V in the oil and gas sector as well. So when I first started out, I was like, I was like working Delta V on the life science sector, but then it slowly became like, I'm like, wait, this isn't life science, this is oil and gas, and then started to put the things together because I should do a little bit of work with Vincent Process Controls. Quick shout out to Brian. I think he's actually on his honeymoon this week, so hope that was a good one. But yeah, they do a lot in the space. It's interesting the way they've branched out with the the impact partners and having the select people who can integrate their systems. It's unique in the market, right? You have Rockwell, who just kind of goes out and it's just like, anyone and everyone who can implement our systems and everything. They have such a wide network where Emerson's kept it very niche. How do you think that's seen that unfold at the ground level? Like, how do you think that
so the distribution, the impact partners called now, EIPs and Emerson, they were local business partner, LBPs in the old days. They came in with Fisher, from an Emerson perspective. And I know Vincent and I know, Puffer Swiven. If you look at the jacket that I'm wearing, it's actually from Puffer and Emerson on a 40,000 DST migration that we did in Baytown. Back in the day. So
jacket's still in pretty good shape.
It's in pretty good shape. I probably haven't used it a lot because I didn't live in a warm place, but I don't need it.
That's fair.
But so I think it's a very different route to market than Rockwell, for instance. And we work with any system, being Siemens or Rockwell or Emerson, to be honest. So the way that they go to market and how they are working with their customers is definitely a little different. But all different technologies have different ways to get access to the customers and how they best see it implemented, right? Ultimately, with the end in mind for the customers, success for the customer, success for patient outcomes, really. Which is also part of the Project Farma. Is patients first, right? PF has the pharma with F, for Project Farma.
Fair. Why? I guess. You started more on the engineering side, and then you moved into sales. How did you see that progression happen? Was it just like a natural career progression? Take me through that a little bit.
Yeah, no, definitely, a little bit of a geek by nature, right? I like technology, always done as a kid as well. And hence, I went to engineering, in college, both, electrical and mechanical and technology management, through college. And so I think that's just been the path. And started out as technical draftsman, or junior engineer, and just kind of walked through, operations in the field engineer, programmed PLCs, pulled wire, and terminated and built, control panels and kind of done all of that. And I think as a part of the natural progression, I worked closely with the customer, was on site, and I turned more and more into a project manager, really. So I kind of went through the operational ranks there and then from there into account management, and we're pretty successful at that, connecting with customers, doing architecture, looking at different solutions on how to best build a system that met the client needs from a controls perspective, right? And from account management, I started to go more towards sales, really connecting with customers. And I think one of the things I really, really enjoy is technical conversations, whiteboard sessions, workshops with the customers, where we look at the different technologies that are available to us in order to solve a problem that the customer has, right? So they have, an internal customer, and VP of operations that want a dashboard, or they want certain data, built, and models done, and how to bring and contextualize this data in order to bring it to the right persons, then that, I think that is a fascinating place to be. And that creativity in that space is kind of what drove me to being connected to customers.
Yeah. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, where you're like, the technical conversation. I think that makes the best person in a specific sales position, where you have the background in engineering, so you understand what's happening on the plant floor, at the engineering level. You don't have to say, oh, let me call in a subject matter expert. You are the subject matter expert. You are able to talk. You can talk to the CEO, but you can talk to the engineer, and you're able to kind of bridge that gap and articulate it in both ways. And that's typically, not always, obviously, there's different circumstances for everything, but that's typically the most successful salespeople, because you understand the entire process going on. So
yeah, no, absolutely. So I think that's the using the technology and understand the value creation of stitching it together correctly. I think that's the ticket, right? So that means that you need to have an affinity for talking to the CXO levels, the people that are funding this, that are the ultimate customers in many ways, right? But also being able to take the technologies that are always evolving, So it's like, I learn every day, right? Because there's always new fun technologies out there that I can bring into the equation that makes a solution easier or better, or more apt for the use case at hand. Yeah.
And I don't want to say sales; it's more consulting. Like, you're able to take that approach of, tell me what we have, let's develop that roadmap and have that whiteboard session.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why it's so nice to be at Interfex. I learn a lot, new people, new things to see, new unit operations, and how do you bring them into an overall overall view, and architecture.
We were kind of talking about this on the way. That's some of the goals. Like, when I go to conferences, it's very focused on, okay, it's not just about what relationships can you make, who do you meet. It's also about, all right, what do you see in the market? What's new? What are the new trends that we're seeing? What's emerging? And so it's very valuable on that side, because you just get some boots on the ground conversations, and typically you can kind of see, right? If it's on the robotic side, right? If you walk through Automate or something, you can see what robot arms are being used, and then you can typically see what most of the market share is, things of that nature. There's little key insights. There's value there. I'm curious, right? In your career, you've probably had a numerous amounts of like pivotal moments that have kind of helped shape your career. What's a move, a risk, or just something, a rejection, or something that is highlighted to you that kind of helped shape your path to where you are now?
Yeah, no. So there's many, it's, I think the life is full of butterfly effects on all angles, and from work perspective as well. So I moved to Austin, as I mentioned, and I had some personal things going on, in the early 2000s. So as a family, we moved back to Norway, and then all of a sudden I met new people and started working for new companies there. And along the way, you always meet new people, right? And you have some new learnings, right? So I think, all in all, I don't think there's like one, specific moment that just kind of say, hey, this just changed everything for me. But I think that is organic growth of tapping into some different industries, learning some new ways to conduct business. But I think one of the things that really sticks with me, is one of my old managers back in Norway. He was always like, whenever you can, just always be present with the customer. Go out and if it and if it takes a day to go to potentially a small customer, just go. Always be on the run and be ready to meet and serve your customers. And I think that's one of the things that always has kind of stuck with me. So I love being out and meeting people and talk about real solutions and architecting them.
Oh, fair. Yeah, and no, that makes a lot of sense. I think at the end of the day, I think being in front of people, talking to people, helping solve problems, that's what I like about my job. It's sales, but at the same time, it's someone has. I get that jolt when someone gets a job, right? Yeah. Someone gets a job, I just help someone find a job. Like, I think there's something incredibly rewarding about that.
Yeah, no, and then I think we're all in sales, right? Yeah. Everyone is always in sales. You sell yourself as a person. You sell, the company that you work for. You're connecting with other people, and we're also all in buying, right? We're. I think that's some of the things that we also should carry in mind, right? There's always a dialogue by by a supplier and someone that buys it, right? Yeah. Because there is a joint need, right? So I think that, absolutely, being there and being ready for that dialogue and minding for what is a good value outcome that, both can live with. Because it's, any sale is, ends up hopefully like in a contract that goes both ways.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't feel right, it will not be repeated. And we all want repeat business.
It's a partnership.
It's a partnership. So I think that's the thing, right? So sales is just someone that opens up the dialogue for that partnership. And then it kind of distills, over time and becomes whatever it becomes as the enigma forms. But I think it always is a bilateral value. Because if one part doesn't feel the value, it will dissolve.
Yeah, fair. Now, you talked about kind of transitioning from more of a technical role to more of a commercial-facing role, right? Like, when did you realize you wanted to get into this leadership, and what was that journey like?
Yeah, so I ended up being the director for life sciences, for Emerson, So I came out of that coming from global key account management. So I had some global key accounts that I were nurturing and working with, and then went into getting more of a portfolio, having people on my team that will be continue to work on driving exactly the value discussion that we talked about. So we built a team there of technical salespeople, business development people, but they were all very grounded with the technology that we had to offer. So I think to your point earlier, I think having that technical understanding is very vital in the field that we're in order to really connect with customers, right? So as that continued, I really enjoyed that position, and then the pandemic hit, and when that happened, I was hunted down for a role where I get the chance to run a P&L, two of them, in fact, one for Canada, one for North America, and for a company that the automation part of a company called ATS out of Canada. And I learned a lot on that. My boss was sitting in Germany, and I learned a lot from him and from the team around. So I think that was a great opportunity for me to just again expand my skill from being technical. I had been through sales, and then through the technical part, product management, operations, and resource planning and leveling and all that, and then coming in and do general management and actually running a P&L where you had finance people on your team that reported up through you. You had HR, you had operations, you had sales, all of that, and I think that was great learning for sure. So I really enjoyed that, and that's kind of the journey.
Now going into like the building teams and being a leader, how do you approach building that high performing team, right? Like, I guess at one point or another, you must have struggled at a certain point, like delegating tasks to people instead of being the person to do it. Now like you said, you have 5 or 6 different units all reporting to you. How do you kind of manage that balance and juggle it all?
We all have different styles, right? I think it's all about building teams that have an inherent amount of trust. So so when you delegate, you got to trust people to do it, but you also got to give them the chance to fail, right? And I think that is the ticket for me, is to be. So I'm probably considered a fairly gentle leader, I think, right? So I hate micromanaging. I like to be working on outcomes, performance-based, management, and have respect for the people that I'm working with and give them a second chance. Maybe not 3, but maybe a couple, right? Don't do the same, error again, right? Type of a thing. So I think that is the style that I like in bringing up teams like that. You got to find good people, like you guys, you are professional at that, right? Finding the right person for the right job, and when you have that, it's about nurturing that and kind of continue to build that talent. You want internal fill rates, from the teams. You want to nurture that through the organization. So that's kind of the idea, and that's kind of how things come alive for me. Is that you want to have a amicable, jovial, a good working environment, right, that you can thrive within. And some people like it more hard-nosed, some does not, and I just like to have people that I can trust to execute.
When you say that, so one of the previous guests, Tracy Purdue, he's at a company called Wybotic. And essentially, to summarize our conversation into a couple of words, it starts with trust.
Yeah.
That was the main takeaway there, and you just kind of, as you just kind of mentioned there, it kind of reminded me, but
I think that's important. I think that's the only way you can do it, right?
Yeah, and I'm a big proponent of you fail forward, right? You mess up, okay, that's fine. Like, everyone messes up. That's part of learning. You learn more from failing than you do from succeeding in most cases.
Yep.
And so it's just making like the same mistake. Once you make a mistake, it's like, okay, now I know this is a mistake. This is why I know, which I think then would translate into more automation. It's those senior level engineers. We talk about integrating AI into automation and what that means and how it is. And I think a big part of it, it's the senior level engineers who have been around, who know the pitfalls, who know the failures, who know the little issues and little nuances that might pop up, right, that you don't know unless you have experience, that even AI doesn't know, which is having to learn. It's getting that knowledge base and transferring it over into, the younger generation, into the workforce that's going to be there, whether it's AI, whether it's people, whatever it might be. But that generation of people who have these hands-on experience, who have seen it for 40 years, that's becoming a big inflection point, I think, within the automation sector. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think it is a challenge, right? To bringing up, so there's a lot of new things as you're bringing up a new generation, right? There's cultural differences, there's different, they lean into learning different. They have other tools to learn from. And there's a lot of work that we did, I think back in the day by pulling wire and doing things that, maybe people coming into the business today doesn't really, they have electricians for that, or they, so they may not even be able to do, like little electronic or electrical kind of wiring anymore. So, being able to do that mentoring and be able to, so we have a mentoring program at Project Farma as well. And I'm part of that, so you get the chance to touch other people and work with them on your ideas and what you think is good and have that dialogue. So I think that is, it's a challenge. I think as we get into AI and a lot of these new tools, right? I think a lot of what a junior engineer can do and what like an AI, agentic AI, can do can kind of overlap. So we got to be very careful to make sure that we are nurturing the young generation properly, bring them into the business. If not, the hands-on skill and a lot of the experience that we have will die out with us old gray-haired bastards, right?
Yeah, no, fair.
If they have hair, that is.
I was going to say, you incorporate yourself. I guess, what do you think the biggest... when you're hiring someone, right? Let's just say it's more of this junior engineer or either level. Like, what's the biggest thing you're looking for in someone, right? Let's start with a more junior level. What are you looking for?
Curiosity.
Okay.
I think that's, and I have that to this day, right? Always learning. I think so they need to have a passion for being curious. And I think in itself, innately, that is a drive within the person, right? So if you have someone that's curious, they will always kind of open another door, lift another lid, see what's under there, trying to understand what is actually going on here. And I think within the automation space, that is really, really important, maybe more than any other space, because you need to know the process of what you're controlling. You need to know the technology you're from. You need to know the outcomes. There's, safety parts in there. There's a lot of different verticals that you need to address within automation, And I think we talked about it yesterday as well when we had a brief chat. But I think having people that, have process understanding coming into this. So chemies, process engineers, bioengineers coming out, is the ticket. There's no automation, typically not an automation line or school or college or that, examines out, people like that, or graduates people like that. So, they usually are MEs or double E's or chemies. But I think the process people are the ticket. And if they're curious, then they can kind of really expand.
And I think I'm going to talk directly to that junior level engineer, the person coming out of college right now. I think the biggest thing, it's if you have that chemical engineering background, you understand the process, have a little bit of the software skills, but not all the, I don't want to say bad habits, but certain habits of a software engineer who's been in the industry, been doing it for a while. They code a certain way. But when you're coding a process, you need to understand the chemical reaction. So that chemical engineer who understands the process, or a process engineer with some software skills and some PLC, DCS, SCADA experience, just automation skills as well, if you can combine the three of them, and it's not like you need to be a professional on each, it's more of have that base understanding, and then you will be developed into that position. Like, that is becoming very vital and very key in a lot in the automation sector. So there's a little direction you can go, I would recommend that if you're an engineer coming out of college. Even pivoting your career.
For sure. And you need to find out, and it's tough to know where you want to go unless you kind of have a year or two, right? So a great time to pivot, I think, for anyone really is that when you've been enrolled for a couple of years, because then you're starting to embody what it is to do this job, and you go like, this thing sucks, or hey, this is wonderful. I want to continue to expand and learn more and go down different rabbit holes in that vertical.
How do you know what you want to do? Because that's a very tough question to answer in the sense of, I feel like a lot of people don't really know what they want to do, and then they go through their career, and then they're like, I still don't know what I really want to do, right? Like, how do you know you're doing the right thing?
Well, you don't. I think that's the thing is that, I think the problem is, right, nobody knows what they don't know.
Yeah.
If I look at the world, there is, most of the things in the world I do not know.
Yeah.
Personally, right?
Yeah.
So, you kind of tend to crash into things, and I ended up running into automation very early on in my career, and I enjoyed it. And I said, this feels cool. Yeah. I could have ended up, doing car manufacturing, or I could have done many technical things out there, right? And lean more into, material science or, whatever that would be. So I kind of stumbled into it, and I enjoyed it, and off you pop, right? And I think that's kind of the thing is that, just be open. And things will present itself to you, things you don't know. But, I think the ticket is to be open to take a look at things. Mm-hmm. And don't be like, this is the only way, but kind of have an open mind, open heart for whatever kind of you run into and evaluate it at the time that it presents itself. Because, or you can be close and then you just kind of stick into one spot.
Yeah, as you said, be curious.
Curious, exactly. It comes back to that.
As soon as you think you know something, you know nothing. In my opinion,
the more you learn about a thing, then when you start going down a rabbit hole, you understand there's a big world here that I didn't even know existed, and I think that goes for anything.
Yeah, which honestly that's how I got into the sector. I was just kind of I knew I wanted to do business development.
Yeah,
and so I got this job. My boss put me, this is your market, and figure it out.
Yeah, I need a business development guy. Maybe I should hire you. You're listening, Lucas.
He's gonna have fun with that one. I guess. From what's the biggest hiring? Speaking on hiring, what's the biggest hiring mistake you've ever made? And we don't need to go details into names or anything. No. The lessons.
I that's a good question, right? I think hiring a manager to manage a technical team without having kind of the technical skill, because a lot of times, you have people managing a team of highly technical individuals. A lot of times the people that work for you make more money than you. Mm-hmm. And they are deeper technical than you, but you may have better managerial skills, right? Yeah. And better at making resource planning, better at making sure that they do all their training and all of these things, right? I'll do all the HR and the 9-boxing and all that, so that's a good manager. So having a manager that I brought on that really struggled with respect from the team because the technical affinity was not there. So I think there's got to be some alignment. It doesn't have to be the best on the team, but they need to be able to carry that conversation.
Fair. No, yeah, I agree with that. And I think people succeed people have different strengths, and it's about putting people in the right position to succeed. Yeah. I think, he brought up Lucas a little bit. I think that's his strong suit. It's managing people. It's understanding people have different strengths, but people have different personalities, and there's so much to it, and it's not one size fits all. It's not cookie cutter, and every day is different. Yeah. Right? It's just taking it as it goes and failing forward and being okay.
Everyone has their own inner life, right? And it's tough to understand what that is, and you need to that, and work is a big part of their life, right?
Yeah, and we kind of touched a little bit about this, right, in terms of building a team. How do you develop a junior engineer versus a senior engineer? What's the difference between kind of managing them and everyone's being different there?
Yeah, so from an engineering perspective, also in automation, right? It's such a broad.
Or salesperson as well.
Or salesperson, So I think from they have a certain skill, but you want to set goals, right? So you have different, you start with knowing a DCS or a PLC, and then maybe you need, as you level up to engineer 2, you have more technical stuff on their plate. They need to understand value creation and, what it does for the customer. You get more involved in the architecture. So it continues to just kind of grow slowly with all the sub-verticals, within automation, right? Because you have the PLC, you have the DCS, You have the historians and the database and the dashboarding. You have the SCADA system, connectivity, integrations, and and all the protocol communication that needs to sit there. And then you have data contextualization and more of a data science part to it. And then you have the MES and the workflow, the PLM, product life management for the, in life sciences for the molecules and all that. There's so many different verticals that you get into for automation. So I think as you're moving through the technical ranks, right, you just need to expand, go deeper and broader in your knowledge. Because you can start really in any of those verticals per se, but as you become more holistic in the field of automation, you need to embrace more of these different verticals of knowledge and go deeper in them if you want to go technical.
Yeah.
But, as with any company, like Project Farma does the same, you need to have different tracks because, you start as a junior engineer, you become engineer 2 or 3, and all of a sudden you go like, I like to go on a different track. I want to go managerial into operations, or I need to, go more towards sales and business development. So having a fabric or an infrastructure within your company where you can career path different ways, I think is going to be very important, which is what we have here as well, right? So, we bring people on board, but then we allow them to grow into the different directions that they want. Because you want to have, low turnover rate, high internal fill rate within your company, right? So people like to stay and they like to be developed and nurtured within the company that they're in.
Yeah, and I think nowadays there's such a rush to get promoted and to continue to go, and it feels like, the only way to go forward is to get into management, where it's companies creating pathways where, hey, you don't need to be a manager. That might not be your strength. You can be an individual contributor, but you could still grow throughout the company, which Metric, we're a growing company, right? We're about 7 years old. At this point, this is where we've started to branch out, whereas we've expanded, I think from like a 70 headcount to 140 headcount over the past year. And it's not everyone is fit to manage. Not everyone's fit to just be an individual contributor. So I think we've expanded those avenues forward as a result.
No, I think it's important, right? You want to have, the ability to go in different direction, and some people, want and just be a single strong, senior consultant and be a single contributor. There is a beauty to that and not managing people. So, I thrive in both in a way. And a lot of times it's like you have the hardline structures within any company, right? And being able, but the actual flow of power within the company usually goes through like more of a matrix thing, right? You need to earn your respect in a way, right? So if you don't have a direct, hey, you need to do this because I tell you to, because it's a hardline report, having that that power structure that goes with influence management, I think that's kind of the real power in it. And you can have that as a single contributor. You're able to tell people that this is what would be good to do in this use case without having to have the direct reports. There's beauty in both.
Yeah. From a current talent landscape, we kind of touched on it, so I think I might know your answer. But over the past 5 years, how's it changed? Like, what's become the hardest role to fill and to find people in?
I think really the deep technical knowledge in any of the verticals that I as mentioned, right? I think whenever I see or we see a really good person that has a really good skill, gray-haired, or it doesn't have to be gray either, 40, 50, but definitely know their field really well.
Or bald.
Yeah, it can be bald. Bald is really the cutest if you ask me. But I think you really need to. So if you have the chance to pick them up, you should as a company. If you know someone that really is of high quality, that are diligent, work hard, intentional, they know how to execute, as a single contributor or as a leader, you should bring them on the team right away, because they always get adopted into the customer realm. Everyone wants a piece of them. So I think and they're always the toughest to find, to answer your question, right? Because they are the nuggets out there.
Okay. And I also make these bald jokes because knowing full well my uncle, he's bald, so that's probably coming in the pipeline at some point.
Fantastic.
I guess, what motivates you, right, in continuing pursuing your career and that growth in your career path?
Yeah, I think coming back to the same thing, curiosity, right?
Yeah.
And that's all about people as well. I love meeting people, understanding what makes them tick. Being able to find new cool technologies, and I think right now it's more of a paradigm shift technology-wise, and it's been in a very, very long time. So being there and seeing how some of these solutions that are coming alive today that really wasn't possible just a few years ago, and the way that we can handle things, always looking for new technology, new fun people to work with that knows much more than I do in many fields. I think that kind of keeps me cooking. Yeah.
How do you surround yourself with those people so you can continue to learn and develop?
Yeah, like here, going to conferences, be curious, go out meeting new customers, going to a new site that they have a challenge that they need to solve, be in the room there and dig in for a few hours. I mean, this is not like you sit down and you get a new technology and 30 minutes later you know it, right? It's a little bit of everything has its own journey. Mm-hmm. And the same connecting with people or multiple in the room and say, okay, what do we need to bring in of technology to solve a specific issue that we want to get sorted.
Okay. And what do you see as like the emerging trends in the industry over the next 5 years? What's changing?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things is that I think cloud modeling, large language models, and I think is going to be a very potent thing, right? Integrating vision, integrating data sets. I think cleaning good data, training sets of data before you run the models, so I think that's going to be important. So which again comes back to really understanding the processes that you want to model. So I think that is one part. I think ideation of new molecules. If you look at some of these big NVIDIA clusters like we talked about, that are installed with 1,000 Blackwells, they're going to create an incredible pipeline of ideas, right? Mm-hmm. And bringing that in through a lab in the loop and connecting all that data so you can take the output of that research and bring it back in. That is the second part that I think is really, really a big step change. So really about the data handling. And I think finally, like everyone is talking about, is AI. I think AI, as a word, has been around for 70 years, right? From Turing back in the 50s, and really, artificial intelligence, like some of the early sci-fi books that we read as kids and stuff, mm-hmm. right? But I think just the last year, how this has kind of transformed the way that we look at data. So agentic AI, predictive AI, generative AI, all the different buckets of this. And I think that, comparing workflows or batches or generating, reports, generating, requirements, doing validation, documentation, there's an agent for that, and I think we're going to see a big step forward in how we are doing, our workflows and how we get things done, based on AI, and agents really. And educate them well. Always going to need an oversight, coming back a little bit to the gray hairs, but people like myself should be able to do a lot with, some junior engineers and some, AI agents. We should be able to go through a lot of different things. You can do, code development, a lot of stuff in that realm. So I think that's some of the trends that is going to, shift a little bit, and how you contextualize data and how you store it also, from SQL to more of data lakes and other ways.
Now, if a client comes to you and says, okay, help us develop a roadmap into this digital transformation.
Yeah.
How do you balance, okay, let's progress and let's use some things that are developing while also, you still need to produce results in the current moment, and kind of balancing the expectations of, what can we do from I guess the generative AI perspective or the predictive maintenance? Like, how do you kind of balance that?
Yeah, I think all the systems that are in place should stay. I'm not a big fan of rip and replace. I think of an organic kind of change and putting a roadmap, like mm-hmm. you say, together, understanding the requirements, and use the AI, machine learning, and these technologies more of an overlay of your current, where you are. So it's about bringing the data from the sources you have today. So most of these customers we're working with, they have an incredibly rich data fabric, already in place, or a lot of data. The fabric may not be there. It's a little bit chaos, mm-hmm. right? A lot of different systems that needs to be brought together. And I think how you connect all of this, through unified name structures, like MQTT, simple handling, event-based driven information, how you contextualize and clean data. I'm a big fan of bringing forward as little data as needed as possible, but yet get the job done. So understanding the requirements, how you are using OPC UA or different protocols to connect all of this, and then bring them, higher up for visualization. Understanding who are your customers internally, right? The VP operations, the maintenance manager, all of these things, so you can do predictive maintenance, predictive analytics. That's kind of the ticket. So I think a lot of the stuff that is there, let it stay, bring it together in a good integration of data, and be careful what you bring forward, because you don't need more data, you probably need less.
And that's an interesting point, because everyone's talking about, we need more data, we need to be able to see everything, where sometimes you can get all this data, but what are you going to do with it?
I think that's the ticket, right? What are you going to do with it? What are the time series that you really need? Do you need that data point stored for every second, or is it enough with every 10 seconds?
And that
all of a sudden you have 90% savings of your data storage and the transactional data.
Yeah.
So really understanding that part, and also understanding when you bring a data point over, the context of it. Hey, this value in the PLC is 95. In AI, nobody understands what that is. It needs to come with a context, right? It is the temperature. From this temperature probe has a unified name tag that comes with some context. Mm-hmm. So I think understanding the data points, how you store them, what they mean. So really, that's the place to start. Understanding your user requirements, who are the customers that wants data and why do they want it, create those functional requirements, then you can create the architecture, really understand what you want out of it, and then you go buy stuff. Because a lot of times people go and buy shiny new toys, and then they bring them in and they don't know what to do with them. Mm-hmm. So I think doing that evaluation, that workshop up front, I think can save a lot of time and money and a lot of frustration, at the customers.
Fair. Do you think it's more important to have a product that can be delivered at its cheapest value, a product that can be easily upgraded as new technologies come across, a product that can produce the best value in the current moment but isn't really upgraded enough? Where do you think there's a middle ground? Like, what do you think is most important on that side of buying it?
Bespoke solutions to me is nonsense,
Okay.
Unless you absolutely have to. Because, if you have a custom solution, that are not maintained and upgraded, by the company that delivers it, mm-hmm. You're going to end up with a very high risk moment in your, in your production flow and process.
Okay.
So, a lot of times they can be cheap, or, maybe, but, if you look at, from a, and you always come down to money, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, right? What makes sense. So when you look at it, you have a capital, expenditure, or you have the total cost of ownership. So a lot of time when you put in, let's say, $1 million asset, the annual cost for maintaining that is at least 10%. Mm-hmm. And you should calculate that into. That means for the next 10 years you're going to pay another $1 million, right? If you buy, let's say that you can get the same functionality by some custom solution that is just a one-off, and it costs you $500,000. It's tempting, right?
Yeah.
It's like you save $500,000 right there, and you have very little future maintenance costs. It looks like, but all of a sudden you end up with something that is a key part of your operation that can fail because they don't maintain Windows NT anymore, mm-hmm. right? So I think those are the things you need to look at: the total cost of ownership and what you anticipate to be the life cycle, of that asset. How long is it going to live, and do you make sure that you want to make sure that you can maintain it, right, for that duration. If not, it becomes a high risk, mitigative things that you need to pay attention to later, which can be painful.
Yeah, fair. I was doing a business development search, and I forget who told me this, and I remember them saying, listen, I don't want, if someone needs a Camaro, or someone needs a Camaro.
Nobody needs a Camaro.
No one. But if they're like, I think he switched it. He actually said, if someone needs a Cadillac, sell them a Cadillac. I don't want them selling a Camaro if they want a Cadillac. Sell them a Cadillac, give them that, and then we'll continue to build that relationship. But don't try to upsell stuff, and I'm not saying it's an upsell from a Cadillac to a Camaro, but don't try to upsell something that you don't need to. If this is what they're asking for, deliver this, talk about it, consult them, but don't try to, sell them too much, like more. you know, it was
Yeah,
kind of, it was
I
an
think, you know,
interesting reference.
what I heard
saying
was
that.
like,
Yeah.
you know, if people want a Beetle, color red, just that's, work with them on that. You know, you can
Listen.
move around, listen, right, and don't. And one of the worst things is that they want a Beetle, but then you want to deliver wonderful things as a supplier, right? And then you deliver the Cadillac or the Camaro, right?
Yeah.
But the customer only willing to pay for the Beetle. So all of a sudden you're also doing bad parts for your business.
Yeah.
You lose money, customer's not happy. It's like a no-win.
Yeah.
So again, it comes back to, for me, I think what you're saying is that it comes back to good definitions up front, understanding, connecting with the customer. What do we want today? What are the problems we want to solve? And then you go and you do that first. Start small. Gain that trust. Make sure you can deliver on the simple, small things before you scale up and chew off more than or bite off more you can chew, type of thing. Yeah.
Fair. Who in the industry, as we kind of start to kind of wrap it up, like who in the industry should we talk to next?
So I had a couple, that I think would be fun for you to talk to. So you want somebody with a little bit of energy and boost, right? So I have a good friend of mine. He's working for Mission Control Group. They just did a big acquisition. His name is Troy Miller.
Okay.
He sits in Austin as well, but I think he would be a good chat. Another one could be Buff Williams. With Daedalus Industrial. I don't know if you know them. They're in South Carolina.
Okay.
He's the CEO there.
Oh, I do know Daedalus. Yep.
Yeah. So also a wonderful guy, and they're building a great shop down there. But I'm more in the life sciences space. They are more in mission critical, building data centers and all that, which is in these days, I should say. So both of them will be good chats for sure.
Okay, Troy and Buff. We'll get
Troy
you guys
and
up.
Buff. That's right.
And we're gonna do some more rapid fire questions as we kind of wrap it up, but. What's the best career advice that you've ever received?
The best career advice I ever received? That's a good, I think I come back to the one I said earlier, right? Just always, be intentional, go after the customer, even if it seems to be a small opportunity or, something that doesn't seem like, interesting on the surface. Always be curious and go all the way. There may be a rabbit hole that, is much bigger and much more fun than you anticipated.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about these rabbit holes. It's very tough. It's fun to dive down them, but it's also tough to stay focused sometimes.
It's tough to stay focused. Sometimes it's tough to get back up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which actually, that's something I find in the automation space a lot. There's a lot of, not rabbit holes, but there's a lot of this forward-thinking technology that's not there yet, but engineers get very in that rabbit hole of, oh, this is there, this is where it's going to be.
Shiny
and it's
toys, man.
Yeah,
Shiny
and
toys.
it's there, but it's not ready, or it's not, a company, a factory might not be ready to implement it. Like you said, it's like you can't just scrape it all and say, we're going to do this now. Like, you have to be able to slowly integrate it.
Yeah, and you need to bring people along for it, right? I think that, in the implementation, with the customer or anywhere, one thing is the technical part of it. Then sometimes it's the simplest.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest is to bring people, along. Educate the people that are going to work with this technology day in and day out at these facilities. Make sure that they have a buy-in and understanding what's going on there. Yeah.
And then what's one trait you think every leader in the sector needs in 2026?
Trust. So one of the things that we had, I was in like a ELT, leadership, with one of my past companies, and they were saying, put up, looking in the room, right, full of VPs and leaders and whatever kind of bullshit people, right? And they said, put up 10 fingers if you have full trust in the people that when you meet a new person, or is it 2 or 3, or how much do you typically trust when you meet someone? Mm-hmm. And everyone was like 3 and 5 and whatever, and I actually had 10. I trust people until they prove me wrong, and I think that is, for me, it's like come into relationships with, I trust you, and let's go from there, because I think that brings a good dialogue right off the bat.
I think there's the common notion of, you have to earn my trust, and I think that's wrong. I think it needs to be.
I think it's the opposite, exactly.
You go in trusting, you have to lose my trust.
And that's where I like to do that, So they have a Dutch saying, right? I've done a lot of work in Europe and lived there for half of my business life, and it's trust. It goes by horse and comes by foot.
Mm-hmm.
so you can digest that, but it goes very quickly.
Yeah.
And so I think coming in with a good level of trust in any relationship, and then and if someone screws you over, then hey, then I think that's kind of a good place to start.
Yeah. What's a book, a podcast, a person that's influenced kind of your mindset, your thinking lately?
Very interesting question. I think my own little podcast these days. Have you ever used Notebook LM?
No.
Yeah. So, so this is kind of fun. So you should look up. I think it's a Google product. Without getting more oomph to that in a company per se. They have plenty of it, but wonderful little tool. So you can give a prompt, and they can create like an audiobook story. Where there's a couple of people sitting like us, kind of bantering about certain things. So I think what I've done as of late is I kind of create a couple. Whenever I'm curious, I put a prompt in, and it generates like a 20-minute podcast, kind of like two people talking, AI oriented, right? And it brings out a good story for you to listen to based on sources that it finds around that specific thematic. I can show you after this show here.
What was that called again?
Notebook LM. I'll show you here later
LM.
on when we're done with this podcast.
Yeah.
Wonderful thing. So that means that, in effect, the best books that I have, audiobooks per se, I can write it out too, I think, that I read lately is my own in a way. Because, I say, this is what I want to learn about, and then it's created for me.
Interesting, yeah. And I think that's a big benefit of AI. It's being able to take all this information that you'd have to normally sift through, and within 2 seconds, you can kind of get that nice summary. And then I think the dangerous part is people who just believe that.
Yeah.
You have to start to then go down the rabbit holes and look into it and ask why. I think the dangerous part of AI is people stop thinking for themselves.
You always gotta, all think for ourselves. And I think AI in the future will think for themselves too.
Yeah.
Right.
So one thing we do is every guest leaves a question for the next guest.
Yep.
And so the last question was given by Freddie Padilla from Trinity Consultants.
Yeah.
Where do you see the industry trending towards for investment and growth?
Yeah, what industry? The life sciences?
Yeah, life science industry.
Sciences. Yeah, I think that, what we're seeing right now is that we're going to see a lot more ideation, a lot more molecules and therapies kind of being developed in the early stage, preclinical. And they're going to drive that through the labs, like I mentioned, with these, NVIDIA, Blackwell installations. I think we're going to have all the majors kind of doing that. So we're going to see an incredible momentum being built early in the pipeline. And it's going to put a pressure on the labs, I think, as we're looking forward. So we're going to have to optimize the assets and the utilization of the assets in the lab, 10,000s of them for every company, right? And along with that, I think we're going to see, very cool therapies and therapeutics, everything from, complex molecules, peptides, really coming to. And so the scale up of that, along with the onshoring, of feedstock, from Asia and from wherever coming back here. So I think we're going to see a very heavy growth in all of that. And, of course, with the overlay and the efficiency that comes in with artificial intelligence.
Okay, fair. Now, I'm going to open up the floor to you to ask the next question. But before we do that, and one thing that I do want to touch on a little because it has to do with investment, merger and acquisition.
Yes.
So Metric itself, we actually were just evaluated at $100 million. We were, it's our second PE, I think, exit over the past 2 years.
Yep.
So since I've been here, by Southfield Capital Partners. So it's a very exciting U.S.-backed company. And so there's a lot of movement in there, and I think a lot changes when it comes to merger and acquisition. How do you navigate that? How do you navigate a company merging together and everything changing and the people involved with that, right? Because at the end of the day, nothing's going to change, but things change. Benefits change sometimes. Like, inevitably something changes. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, no, you have different cultures coming together, right? So again, being humble to the new people that, owns you or that, taking over, and kind of lean into that. There is much private equity out there today, right? And if you look at the open stock market in general, I think if you look at the common stock exchanges, in the U.S., and I'm not sure the exact numbers, but let's say it's 8,000 different companies that are floating on the open exchanges. Like 10 years ago, I think today, you see that number coming down more and more. Private equity companies are taking them off the exchanges. You see more private equity picking up smaller companies, and that happens in the life sciences industry and any other industry, really. So you're going to see more and more of a concentration towards that. So I think that's just the nature of the beast. But there are, with that comes for sure, some change in culture. New business systems coming in. So there is divestments and investments. So I think the important part there is just like, as an individual in all of this, I'd say don't lose your individuality, right? Try to be true to who you are, and you can always move on to another company if you don't like what's going down, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, now going into that, what's the question that you'd like to leave for the next guest?
I think, a good question would be, what is a cool technology that you see in the automation realm that has not been invented yet, and and how would that gain value in the industry?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, besides that, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to kind of share, or anything else?
No, not really. I appreciate you having me on. It's wonderful to connect and meet with you. And of course, anyone that wants to have a deeper chat, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's kind of where everyone goes these days, I think, for this. But yeah, look forward to get back to Interfx and learn some new things. And thanks for your time.